Hello, everybody. Hello, Carlos. Be very welcome. It's a great time to be here with all of you for this moment of the artist. And we are here to enjoy the practice of the art Jin Shin. And we have some colleagues who will be sharing with us. Have you got a message for us, Carlos?
Yes.
How about this moment for you?
Well, this is something for me that's very exciting. To see people express what they know because you know that you know, and in my experience, first time, second time, the 10th time, I still feel a little bit nervous. Don't worry, my friends. We are in family. So, this nervous thing happens just for seconds in the beginning, then we go with the flow. And, this is, I told this is exciting for me because this is what we are expecting with our project here to help you to feel comfortable sharing what you know because the world needs to know what you know.
And looks like we have a friend that it's already happy to start talking. How about inviting her? So, Joy, please. It's your turn,
Okay.
my friend.
Well, first I'll have some class participation, and I'll have you all hold your thumb. You can hold the front or the back. If you're familiar with the art of Jin Shin, you'll know that down the front is the exhale, up the back is the inhale, and you can hold the side on the side toward the center line is the exhale, and on the side toward the rest of the world is the inhale. So you can wrap the entire thumb. You may find sore spots that you want to focus on. You may, as you hold your thumb, you may feel sensations. You may feel a pulse. You may feel textures. You may get images. That's your personal energy center centers plural talking to you. On the other hand, you may also feel nothing, just your thumb the palm of your other hand. But when you're feeling nothing, remember, when you are interacting with your friends, when you are in a group or gathering, sometimes you have much to say, and sometimes you do just the listening. That's what's going on when you hold your thumb. I took an opportunity to visit Japan in 2024. Whenever our tour group, wherever our tour group went, if I had an opportunity to mention I was a Jinshin Jutsu practitioner, it was amazing and humbling to hear one Japanese turn to another and speak much Japanese. And then at the very end, I'd hear the magic words Jinshin Jitsu, or maybe just Jitsu. And then another bout of Japanese, and then the magic words Jiro Murai. The Murai family were doctors of the Japanese medical community and passing the healing skill down from father to firstborn son. A bit of history that I have heard in 5-day classes over the years is that in Chinese medicine, the bladder meridian with its left and its right sided flows has 2 lines down the back, one on either side of the spine. the first flow. And the second pathway is about 1.5 to 2 inches out. So if you divide the back in half from the spine to the edge of the body, then you've got that halfway mark. So the first line of what's called the bladder meridian flow in the Chinese is what our art of Jin Shin recognizes as the main central universal harmonizing energy pathway. And that second line that the Chinese recognize is what we in the art of Jin Shin recognize as the supervisor universal harmonizing energy pathway. Jiro Murai, our highly intuitive founder, is recognized by the Chinese medicine, per my current level of understanding, as having found the third pathway, which is really close to the edge of the body and is pictured in our textbooks that we have been gifted by Mary Burmeister. I haven't found a picture of this third line when asking St. Google for pictures of the bladder meridian. This is simply my current level of understanding. The discovery by our highly intuitive founder, Jiro Murai, was accomplished during those additional 50 years the art of Jin Shin granted our founder through his daily practice of the art. And as he continued his lifelong journey in experimentation on himself and others in finding out how our art works. Now remember, he had no textbooks, he had no handouts, he had no other fellow teachers, he had no other fellow practitioners. He had his observations of the various poses of the Buddha statues and observed different fingers and toes that were held in various combinations. And just as a brief aside here, that was an excellent observation by our highly intuitive founder, because if you think of it, yes, many societies pass down knowledge one generation to the next verbally. But what happens when that person of knowing, capital K, knowing, dies unexpectedly in that verbal society with an accident, by sudden illness, or war? If they've not passed that verbal information along, thinking, as most humans do, that there is always time, then that link, that bit of knowledge gets lost. And we end up with fragments that don't make sense to our current day and age, because it can be a sentence, a paragraph, a page, whole chapters of knowledge that can get lost if it doesn't get passed on soon enough. So Jiro picked up on the fact that the wisest of the wise of the previous generation found a way to create their own arc of information. In other words, through the poses of the stone statues that would last generations, even to our modern time. And we've seen it ourselves in our own verbal conversations, that to the point where we have difficulty when hearing and understanding what the nuances were of handwritten documents that were written a mere 100 years ago. So in my role as cheerleader, it's go Jiro. To return to my story, Jiro Murai was not a firstborn son, which is a boon for us. In his day, the firstborn was expected to carry on the skill and craft of the father. So our intuitive founder, Jiro Murai, grew up in a household where medical terminology was spoken as part of the family conversation, from his father to his older brother. Jiro Murai, being a second son, was able to explore different philosophies that drew his attention. We know he studied in various temples and shrines. He studied mathematics, as he has been quoted as saying, all the flows in our art of Jin Shin are based on number. And he studied how the ancients understood the world, that number has function. It's not just a method of counting things. All of this and more, giving much depth to Jiro Murai's understanding of life and the art of Jin Shin. Now, Jiro Murai was not a 100% serious person. He lived a large life in his teens and his early 20s. He sampled and experienced life, for instance, by entering the Japanese equivalent of the Western pie eating contest or hot dog eating contest, and he often won. It could possibly be these excesses of fun led him to become very ill in his mid-20s. Now, Jiro Murai was born in 1886. In 1886, some historical events that occurred are the United States of America was 100 years old. The book, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, written by Robert Louis Stevenson, was published. The first United States nurses magazine, called The Nightingale, first appears in New York City. A German patent was granted to inventor Carl Benz for the first successful gasoline-driven automobile, which was driven at a top speed of 16 kilometers per hour, or 10 miles per hour. Spain abolished slavery in Cuba. The city of Vancouver, British Columbia, was incorporated, and the first man-made aluminum was produced. Now I'll have you hold your index finger, please. And when Jiro Murai was 26, and deathly ill, we are now in the year of 1912. In 1912 in the world, Sun Yat-sen formed the Republic of China. Australian outback artist Russell Drysdale was born, and Isabella Goodwin was appointed the first U.S. woman detective in New York City. The Titanic underwent sea trials under its own power. And for those of you who have watched the movie Pretty Woman, the Beverly Hills Hotel was opened in California. And Japan's first taxi cab service began in Ginza, Tokyo. 2 years into the future from this time of World War I would begin on July 28th of 1914. And roughly 6 years after that, people would gear up to celebrate life in what is now known as the Roaring Twenties in the U.S. history. In 1912, no one in his family, which consisted of well-known doctors, and no one in the Japanese community, medical community at that time, could give him any hope of cure. So he asked his family to take him to the family cabin in the mountains so he could prepare to die as peacefully as he could, planning to use the various mudras, or hand poses, that he had learned in his time observing various statues of the Buddha in the various temples and shrines and their texts in his many travels and studies. Now I'll have you switch to the middle finger, please. For 5 days, he grew colder and colder. Then on the 6th day, he experienced a great heat, probably with sweating from head to toe. And this is not so strange or out of the ordinary. You and I have observed from childhood that the most frequent first response of a reasonably healthy body is great heat. As children's growing teeth work to break through the skin of the jaw, they develop a temperature. As children's and teenagers' bodies are exposed to disease like measles, mumps, whooping cough, whatever, they develop temperature. Adults let themselves get too acid or too alkaline with their dietary habits, and another approach to healing, that too much alkalinity and too much acidity will develop colds because it weakens the body's immune system. And so We feel the scratchy throat of the common throat, cold, and what comes along with that? Temperature. Continuing on, Jiro Morai woke on the 7th day whole and healthy. He probably dropped to his knees in wonder of what on earth he had just experienced, over and above the body generating great heat to kill whatever unnamed germ he had. And he then picked up his pallet and walked down the mountain. And now hold your ring finger, please. Since we have the art of Jin Shin today, he apparently decided he needed to dedicate his life to whatever this was that seemed to have granted him life. And this is another reason to honor our highly intuitive founder, because with his very life, he demonstrated to us that he shifted his mind focus from, why am I so sick? Why do I have to die now? I'm only 26. And how on earth and off of it can I get well? And he shifted from that mind focus to, why am I healthy? How can I be? And visualize that with Mary's capital B, capital E, to stay healthy. Now, Jiro Morai did not call our art the art of Jin Shin initially. He used many titles based on the many sensations he experienced while getting to know himself through the various personal energy centers he found with his many days, work, hours, weeks, and months of experimentation and study of other healing modalities. Some of these names include the art of happiness, the art of compassion or benevolence, the art of longevity, because suddenly he had lots of life, the art of self-knowledge, because he was seeing himself be healthy and stay healthy, and he wasn't running to the doctor every other week saying, what's going on here now? He was in health. And it finally became our art of Jin Shin. Now, we define Jin, a Japanese word, as a compassionate human being. We define Shin, a Japanese word, as source, force, or creative intelligence. And ultimately, the art of Jin Shin translates as the art of the creator for the conscious, awakened human being. We are indebted to Jiro Morai for his many aha moments, his passion to continue his research, his curiosity, and his compassion to help both himself and others. We are indebted to Jiro Morai for his journaling and documenting what occurred with this or that personal energy center combination when focusing on the imbalances of breath and the project the person brought to be worked on. We are indebted that Jiro Morai taught his own self-help classes. Now remember, he still doesn't have textbooks, no handouts, or probably very few, certainly without fellow teachers or practitioners. In short, we are indebted to Jiro Morai for being a black sheep, because there was no one else in almost the entirety of his additional 50 years of life with whom he could discuss the positives and the negatives of the experiences, because he was the first. Speaking as referring to, quoting Gene Roddenberry of the Star Trek family, he went where no man had gone before. And I would add, had gone before with intent, consciousness, and focus. But while being a black sheep, he didn't retreat to a cave and isolate himself. He didn't get so involved in understanding the art and finding words to describe the art. He didn't get so involved in that he couldn't talk about the art to the lay person. I've worked on a personal note. I've worked with people who were so wrapped up in what they were trying to describe, and they would get so far into their own experiment that if I walked into their office and asked them an everyday layperson question, you could almost see their focus shatter, because they had lost the word to talk, outside of what they were focused on. So Jiro Murai didn't do that mistake or do that imbalance. He kept his balance by teaching self-help in the homes of family and friends who supported him, and he made connections with street people, the homeless people. It's my personal current level of understanding that he would put out notices, and at this time the Japanese did have quite a good newspaper system, so he probably used that in addition to any posts where posts could be posted. But he put out the word, and he'd say, hey, next week, if you've got stomach problems, come see me and meet me here at such and such. Or in a week, I'm going to be working with ear problems, or ear challenges. So meet me at this park, or meet me at this person's house, and we will experiment. So he shared his knowledge and laid the foundation for us in this day and age to find how this art blends with and supports the many various and different approaches that mankind has discovered around the globe through the ages to maintain health. Now I'll have you shift to your little finger, please. For one final thought, I propose that his experimentations inspire all students to have ongoing study, so that as we become friends with our closest friends, our personal energy centers 1 through 26, he has given us a prime example to follow our question, our wondering, our musing, with ongoing experimentation, which will, in turn, I believe, be a factor in keeping this art vibrant and alive. For instance, language changes, as I mentioned earlier. And I think we all work to find current modern day language that communicates to family, friends, and our community within which we live and play and work, so that we can all allow each other to be the fullest, most abundant human beings possible, and not go on witch hunts due to lack of understanding. A wise man in this century has said, the greatest gift we can give to each other is simply to see them as they are and who they are, not who we want them, other person, to be. Now, why did I ask you to hold your fingers? If your hands are hot like mine, you can give them a rest, or you can shift and hold the other hand, whatever you feel drawn to do. Now, why did I ask you to hold your fingers through today's talk? I wanted you to experience how easy it is to help yourself. Jiro Murai let us know that we can help balance the 5 elements that our life consists of, that being earth, water, spirit, air, and fire. Through holding the fingers, you've just reminded the body that all the elements are needed to be in balance for a happy, healthy mind, body, soul on this earthly plane. Another relationship that by holding the fingers, you've reminded the body, mind, spirit relationship that the emotions need to be in balance. That when these emotions are stagnant and no longer simply experienced, learn from, and let go, they become the attitudes of fear. The family of fear consists of worry, the fear of not surviving, anger, or disappointment in others, or disappointment in events, sadness, or disappointment in others, or disappointment in events, and the try-tos of life, the pretenses of life. Another relationship we call the body, mind, spirit attention to is the 12 organ flows. We have 2 flows for each finger and 2 flows for the palm. So even when you're holding your fingers, if you're resting the hand in the palm of the other, you're triggering all of that to remember to flow freely and abundantly in its pathway. There are also our personal best friends, the 26 personal energy centers. There are 5 that each finger facilitates and triggers to flow freely and abundantly, and then there's 1 in the palm of the hand. And I would remind you that these best friends of energy help clean, rebuild, repair, and maintain the body, are with you from birth to death. That's longer than any other relationship you're going to make in your life. So when you get people, when you see the psychologist say, hey, if you want to be the leader, then lead yourself. Or if you want to know others, then know yourself. And there are, as I just listed, just a few of the relationships. There are many, many more relationships that our hands help us connect to. Remember, when Jiro Murai added the art of Jin Shin to his daily regimen, he lived an extra 50 years after facing death sentence at the age of 26. I can attest to the fact that energy flowing freely and abundantly makes life efficient on this earthly plane. I have 19-year-old cats. One's a long hair, one's a short hair. But other than that, they're just your plain, basic, everyday, ordinary cat. And the only piece I've added to these cats, which are the oldest cats that have ever owned me, is the art of Jin Shin. And oftentimes, as you've probably noticed in past gatherings like this, if I'm sitting in a tall chair, they will join me when the art of Jin Shin is being spoken about, or they will join me when I'm in the process of giving myself self-help. It is said that what people know, what people believe, and what people accept are all different matters. I invite you to go beyond these divisions and accept Jiro Murai's example of experimentation and explore your own personal universe. I invite you to find and know the balance of your own unique positives and negatives. I invite you to be true to yourself. In other words, to believe that you are a unique, irreplaceable human being. Thank you, Jiro Murai, for being all that you could be, and for living your life to its fullest and its most abundant with your inquisitive and scholarly approach. Louisa, I pass the baton to you if you want to go next.
Hello. I thought I should introduce myself. I'm Louisa Coons. I'm in Denver, Colorado. A friend of mine back in 1986 invited me to have a session, energy work session. And I graciously accepted, had no idea what she was talking about. And I got on her table and she placed her hands in various parts of my body. And at one point I said, oh my goodness, I'm really dizzy. So she moved her hands up around my neck and such, and the dizziness went away pretty quickly. At the end of the session, I sat up from the table and I noticed something very different. And I said, my goodness, I feel like I'm breathing into the depths of my lungs that I haven't breathed into in a long time. And she said, well, I did the lung function energy for you, is one of the things that I did. And I said, wow. And I said, I have to learn this. So she started teaching me some self-help. And a year later, I was very blessed. Both of us went to a class in Boulder, which is about 35, 40 minutes away from me. And Mary Burmeister was my instructor in 1987. And one of the things that Mary did during our class, our 5-day class, was to have us trace our fingers on a piece of paper. And then we colored them in. And she taught us about the attitudes associated with those fingers and the depths. So if the crew can upload this graphic, I can go through the fingers and talk about them. So as you can see, those of you on this presentation just heard Joy talk about the fingers and the thumb that we held. Before I go into that, I want to mention that Jiro said that we can harmonize our bodies with just our fingers. And he also said that attitudes are the cause of all disease. And Mary, in her instructions, spelled out diseases DIS hyphen EASE. So dis-ease. So first, we can gently, as Joy was saying, gently hold our fingers. And the first one, the thumb, is represented by the element earth. And the color on the chart is yellow. And it represents worry, the first depth, which is our skin surface, protecting us from the outside elements. The ascending energy, function energy for first depth is the spleen flow, and the descending is the stomach function energy flow. So I think I said it represents the attitude of worry. So we can harmonize worry with gently holding our thumb. The next finger is fear, or fourth depth, which represents our muscles. So you can gently hold that index finger, and the ascending energy for the muscles in fourth depth is the kidney function energy, and the descending energy is the bladder function energy. So we can move on to the third finger, which is anger. And those of you, Mary even talked about it, anger. And when people are mad and angry, they might just show you their middle finger. So you can remember that finger by, oh, I'm angry. I need to harmonize myself. I need to chill out. So the third depth is the middle finger, and it represents blood essence or fluids or gases in the body. And the ascending function for the third depth is the liver, and the descending function is gallbladder. We move on to the ring finger, and the attitude here is sadness or grief, and it represents second depth, which is deep skin. The ascending function energy for the second depth of the ring finger is the lung function energy, and the descending is the large intestine. And moving on to the little finger is the fifth depth, and in the attitude of trying to or pretense. That's represented by the fifth depth, which is bones. So the ascending function energy for the fifth depth is the heart function energy, and the descending is the small intestine. And you can see in the palm the spiral of energy, and that is the sixth depth. And there are no attitudes associated with the sixth depth. It's an all-inclusive energy spot on our body. And the sixth depth bridges our ascending and descending energies as we inhale and exhale, or exhale and inhale. The descending, excuse me, the ascending function energy is the diaphragm function energy, and it actually helps all the descending function energy. And the descending function energy is the umbilicus function, but it helps all the ascending function energy. So with that, talking about the energy spirals, Mary says the thumb is the leader of the pack. So with the left hand, the energy moves toward the little finger and spirals. And with the right hand, again, it moves toward the little finger. So the left hand spirals clockwise and the right hand spirals counterclockwise. And that's why we can place our left hand over a splinter or a bite or a sting, poison in the area or bruising, and our right hand on top of that area, and it will open or lift out whatever issue we have. And the opposite, if we place our right hand on bleeding or a hernia, third-degree burns with our left hand, I think I had that opposite, the right hand and the left hand on top, that will close or seal or stitch the area. And I've been told that Mary's son was playing out in the yard with some friends, and one boy hurt himself. I think he fell off a swing maybe, and was bleeding. So David did this technique over the area and had his friends stack their hands the same way. And the bleeding stopped and the kid was fine. And the mother came out of the child that was injured and was in amazement and said, you can't keep this a secret. You've got to teach this. So that was some of Mary's beginning. And it was a very powerful, with more and more people stacking their hands. It was just incredibly powerful. So now I'd like to show you the fingers that facilitate harmony for the energy centers. And we call them safety energy locks or personal energy centers in our body. So if you can move to put this graphic up. This graphic will show us the areas of the body that have areas that are specific to help us harmonize throughout the body. And you can see, if you look at the image of the front of the body, on the left-hand side, you'll see a number 1, and you'll see a down arrow, but you also see thumb. So what's that saying is the safety energy lock 1, which is there on the inside of our knee, can be harmonized by holding our thumb. And it's a descending energy. And you can also see in the center between the bodies, their colors representing the different depths that I reviewed in the body. So first depth being the skin surface. So as we go down the body, The next safety energy lock or personal energy center is number 5 at the inside of the ankle. And you can see that's white, which is represented by second depth. So that's index finger. So as we move through the body, we're going to just move next to our fingers. Then you'll see safety energy lock or personal energy center 6 on the arch of the foot. And then the tip of the big toe is safety energy lock 7, personal energy center. And that is where the energy that comes down the body transitions to where it starts to move up the body in the back. Then we move on to safety energy lock 24 that is on the top of the foot above the index toe. And that is our ring finger. Then we're going to be on the back of the body. So you see the back is 16 at the outer side of the ankle. So that is back to thumb. We just left little finger and went to thumb again. And then the back of the knee on the outside is safety energy lock, personal energy center 8. Then the next one in line is 25 on our sit bone. And these are all going up. Douglas, let me know, are you hearing that lawnmower?
Yes, we are.
Let me close my door. That should be better. It's across the street. So the 25 is our middle finger. And then we move up to the top of our hip. And that's 2, which is our ring finger. And we work to 23, which is the base of the ribs in the back. And that's again, little finger. And I'll remind you, these depths are all marked. Each one of them represents a different depth. And you might notice that 23 is the only one that is in the 4th depth. So that's a unique position for that and powerful position. So we go back to 9, we go back to our thumb. And then 10, 9 is at the base of our scapula. 10 is midway on our scapula, kind of in between the spine and the scapula. And then number 3 is at the top of the scapula. Now we're going to move up, and that's middle finger. And now we're going to move up the arm, and you see 17 right here on the wrist. And that would be our ring finger. We come around to the base of our thumb. That's 18 and little finger. Now we're going to move back down to the neck. And you can see, I missed 19. 19 is our elbow, right here on our elbow is number 19. And that's our thumb. So now we're going to move down to the neck, and that's number 11, and that's index finger. Number 12 is middle finger. Number 4 is ring finger. There at the, I didn't say, but 11 is the base of the neck, 12 is the middle of the neck, and 4 is the base of our skull. Now we're going to go back over to the front of the body and the top of the head. There, see, above the eye is number 20, and that's the little finger. So now we're going to move back to the thumb at 21, which is right on the cheekbone. And then that's thumb. Index finger, 22, which is right below our collarbone. right here is index finger. 13, that is basically off of our third, off of the sternum on our third rib, is our middle finger. Then 14 is the bottom of our ribs in the front. So that's ring finger. And then 15 is about an inch or so off where the bend in our femur and hip is in the front of the leg. So that's all our fingers. Now you can see we go down the body and back up in the back to right by the back of the underarm, back on the back. That is Safety Energy Lock Personal Energy Center number 26. And that's represented by the palm of the hand. So all of these harmonizing energy centers can be harmonized by our fingers. Then if you can move down to the third page of this graphic at the bottom, you can see at the bottom there's a matrix, and this gives a graphic of each individual finger. So you can see that thumb is Safety Energy Lock 1, 16, 9, 19, and 21, and so on for the index finger, 5, 8, 10, 11, and 22. So what I did for myself so that I could memorize these without having to have a chart is I memorized the thumb. And I got it down that the thumb was 1, 16, 9, 19, and 21. So I could move to the next one on the body and figure out which this was. Or I could back up and memorize or figure out what this was, the little finger was. So I've been able, as the time goes on, to remember which fingers are on these charts without having to look it up or having to count through my body and count through my fingers. I'd like to show the next graphic, this one. On this one, it's interesting, and I didn't recognize who did these charts. The first one with the attitudes and the colored hands, I got from Marie Kratz Jazerski, and she's in New Jersey, a friend of mine. And the second one came from Betty Wall's website. And this one comes from Mona Harris. So I thought this was very interesting because the numbers are presented in a different order on the hand, but they're all the same. Each finger has the same numbers. So you can see I was talking about 1, 16, 9, 19, and 21. Well, they're presented in a different order here, but you can see how those safety energy locks at the top, or personal energy centers at the top of the fingers, harmonize the head and the neck. So 21, 22, 21, and 22, and 12, and 4, and 20 all harmonize the head and neck. And the same with the arms and shoulders. We have 19, we have 11, and we have 3 at the tip of our scapula. We have 17 and 18. And these harmonize our arm and shoulders. And for the chest and back, we have 9, which is at the base of the scapula. We have 8, that is the lateral side of our back of our knees. And we have 25, that is our sit bone. We have 2 at the top of our hip. And we have 15, which is right below the bend of our leg on our femur. And those all help the chest and, whoops, I'm getting my lines wrong. Those are, I got backwards. I flipped lines. So I'll go back to the chest and back. So it's 9 at the base of our scapula, 8 at the lateral side of our knee in the back.
10.
Oh, no, that's 9. You're right. Thank you, Joy. 10, which is just above the 9, midway the scapula. 13, which is on our sternum, on one side of or the other of our third rib. And then 14, which is the base of our ribs, and 23, the base of our ribs in the back. So that's the chest and back. Now to move to the hips and legs, that's 1, the inner side of our knee. 8, which is the lateral side of our back of our knee on the lower side. 25, which is our sit bone. 2 is the top of the hip, and 15 is an inch or so below the bend of our femur and hip in the front. So that's hips and legs. And then lastly, the feet. 16, which is the outer side of our ankle. And 5, the inner side of our ankle. 6 is the arch of our foot. 7 is the tip of the big toe. And 24 is the top of our foot just above the ring toe. So that's our fingers. And then 26, of course, is the palm of our hand. So I just thought that was an interesting variation of displaying the relationships that we have, and how many relationships we have. And there's so much more. We can harmonize the nerves, we can harmonize the spine and the muscles with our fingers. So that's for you to explore. I think that's what I wanted to share, and hope you all have fun with your fingers. And now I would like to ask Heather to present. I'm looking forward to what she has to say.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I would like to recap a summary of Jiro Marai and a little bit about how he rediscovered the art of Jin Shin. And many of us here are already well versed in the art of Jin Shin and its origin. But for those of you who are perhaps new to the art or have a curiosity about the art, then I hope that this information will encourage you to take that curiosity a little bit further. The principles and practices of Jin Shin Jitsu are deeply rooted in ancient, long-forgotten healing traditions. And it was out of necessity that the art was rediscovered by Master Jiro Marai after years of impeccable systematic research. Who was Master Jiro Marai? Jiro Marai was born in Kaga City in 1886 in Japan. He was born the second son in the family, and his father, like so many of his ancestors, was a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. In the Japanese custom, it's expected that the first male of the family should follow in the profession of the father. So Jiro was free to choose his own path professionally. He started out as a breeder of silkworms, but his nature was quite reckless, and He often indulged in food and drink. He participated quite often in eating competitions, and he was awarded cash prizes for consuming high quantities. By the age of 26, he became seriously ill, seriously unwell. And a succession of doctors treated him, but his condition worsened and he was deemed terminally ill. As a last request, Jiro asked his family to carry him to their cabin in the hills, in the mountains, on a stretcher, because he was very weak, and to leave him there and return on the 8th day to retrieve his body. There in the cabin, Jiro fasted, meditated, and practiced various finger positions. And during that period, he passed in and out of consciousness. He had seen different hand positions known as mudras in Buddhist temples during his many travels, but although he wasn't a practicing Buddhist, he decided to reproduce those hand movements systematically. And during this time that he was passing in and out of consciousness and his physical body was growing colder, by the 7th day, he felt like his body had been lifted out of a deep freezer and dropped into a red hot furnace. When the intense heat subsided, he experienced a tremendous calm and inner peace. And he realized he was cured. Jiro then devoted the rest of his life to understanding how that healing process had happened. And back home, he collected information. He traveled a lot, visiting libraries, temples, to reorganize this lost art. He used his own body as a lab and spent a lot of time meditating in the mountains. During his lifetime, he practiced over 400 mudras, but he said that the first 8 mudras, which were the ones that he used to heal himself in the cabin, were the best of them all. And these are the mudras that are presented in Mary Burmeister's text and self-help books. After 10 years of research, Jiro knew the art worked, but he didn't know how. He began to share with others. He went to slaughterhouses to observe end of life and also purchased the heads of dead animals at a cost of something like $500. And it's just so that he could study the brain. And he also studied human cadavers. He became very well respected after time in the high-ranking Japanese families because he was working with many beggars and homeless people on the street, and his healing abilities became very well known. And he was given permission by the emperor to he could do some research in the imperial archives. And that's where he found the Koji key, which is the record of ancient things. I think it was in 711 or 712 AD, where it was created. I'll mention about the Koji key a little bit later, but continuing with the story of Jiro, one night after a long meditation, he woke up with the complete answer. It was as though it had been channeled to him. And he started writing everything down for an entire week. And effectively, what he had actually produced was an energetic and physiological interpretation of the Koji Ki. So the Koji Ki is a story about the myth of creation, how Japanese human beings and gods were created. And Jiro understood metaphorically how the human being was created. He related these gods to different energy centers in his body. And he presented this information in the form of a book to the royal family, but they asked him not to publish this book. So that was in the early 1940s, when emperors were still considered to be divine beings. So Jiro Marai did take his book to a temple where it received an imperial seal, which I think it's got a seal for 100 years. Yeah. And he was given, however, permission to share this information. So in the 1940s, at the age of 55, he started teaching Jin Shin Jitsu to others. He taught one class about philosophy, as in the Koji Ki, and the next class about the practical of the art. He used a calligrapher to present this on very delicate rice paper. And this was given to one student who then copied it and passed it on to the next student, because of course in those days we didn't have the benefit of photocopiers or mobile phones. Yeah. So I'd like to now mention a few words about the Koji Ki. So the Koji Ki is the record of ancient matters created around 711, 712. And this is the oldest extant chronicle in Japan. And it's mainly composed of songs and poems. The original Koji Ki was comprised of a list of deities. I think, Carlos, that's correct, because I'm sure I heard that in one of your classes. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so Jiro Marai was an avid reader and had a very innate understanding of the body. And Jin Shin Jitsu was effectively an appendix to his original interpretation of the Koji Ki. Yeah. And the deities in the Koji Ki story inspired Jiro to find the meaning in each of these names and how they related to the energetic movements, yeah, in the body and its function. As mentioned, the original version of the Koji Ki was simply a list of deity names, but all of which would have carried their own stories and meanings from their ancestral sources. So while the depths and their philosophy represent Mary Burmeister's original language and terminology, which was developed for English-speaking audience, it may be noted that some of these deity names can be associated with the depths. So understanding the interrelationship between Jiro Marai's original work and both Kato Sensei and Mary Burmeister, as exposed to cultures, Eastern and Western, brings us closer to the true authenticity of the Jin Shin Jitsu material and not a diluted form of it. And so Jiro Marai said, one of the things Jiro Marai said, if you are not feeling well, the most important thing you can do is breathe. First the breath, then the fingers, and then everything else. So, in honor of those words, I would like to propose a short practice, a very short practice, together to reflect those words, namely the 36 breaths holding the hands, the fingers of each hand and the palms for 3 beautiful exhaling breaths. For those of you who are not familiar with this practice, we start with the left thumb of the left hand, and you can wrap your fingers whatever way you want. The most important thing is for you to simply exhale, let go, and be the smile. Be the dropping of your shoulders. So, everyone get comfortable. And it would be good to close our eyes. So, because each of us breathe at a very different tempo, and so when you have completed, you can open your eyes. So let's begin. Wrapping your finger for 3 exhaling breaths round your thumb of the left hand. And when we exhale from head to toe, long and deep, we release all the stale air held in our lungs. And as you move through your fingers at your own pace, perhaps you might like to observe the pause just before the exhale begins again. In Jin Shin, 36 adds up 3 plus 6 to the vibrational number of 9, meaning total and complete. And as we continue to move through the fingers of our left hand, don't forget your palm. And when you're ready, and in your own time, You can start on your right hand, beginning with the thumb. Perhaps you're noticing a different pulse or a vibration as you touch each finger, as your jumper cable. Perhaps you feel a release, a warmth, a coolness. Now, as you go deeper into the breath, noticing perhaps that exhale reaching all the way to your belly button. When we practice the 36 breaths, we eliminate stress, any irritation becomes calm, any anxiety becomes peace. Any anger becomes gratitude. Gratitude for this breath of life and these jumper cable fingers and toes that we've been given, gifted to us. By practicing these 36 breaths, we are connecting back to Source. We are connecting to the light of seventh depth. We receive sustenance for life. And now, to complete the practice of Jin Shin Jitsu, teaches us that with each breath we are made new, imbued with a new awareness of our limitless life energy and awakened to our ability to partake of effortless reality. Thank you, everyone, for your presence and support today. With gratitude.
Thank you all. Thank you, Heather. And moving in the energy that Heather just brought us, when I do remember Jiro, I also remember the breath. But I also do remember this mudra, just praying for ourselves, for our inner power, our inner energy. And as simple as that, when we do this, bust line, heart, heart, Timu, Timu, happiness. There is a reason for breathing. Yes, Carlos? What's the reason? What Jiro says about that? Help me here.
Just said the only reason to breathe is to laugh. It seems funny, but it's really profound. He was shared to us. The reason to be alive is to be happy.
And being happy, let's check if we have someone who wants to share something about Jiro. Let's check with our friends. If you want to say something about Jiro, if you did testimony something with our art, please raise your hand. This is the timing that you have to talk about our art. Oh, Caroline, I saw a hand.
First of all, thank you all, the three wonderful presentations. And I worked with the names of the three ladies. And if Carlos said that, Jiro said that the main reason to breathe is laughter. I worked with the names of Joy, Louisa, and Heather. I took part of it. And from Heather, I took the art. From Louisa is, and from Joy, joy. So the art is the joy. So Jiro is again listening because we just learned the same thing just in 2025.
Well
Thank
done. Cool.
Who else? Let me see some face. Hi, Denise. You want to share something to us? We miss you. Open and mute your microphone, please.
Okay, I'll share one of my constant reminders to myself is drop the shoulders. So I'm very much reminded of this. I garden a lot, and as I'm pushing the wheelbarrow around to take care of gardening chores, it's wonderful because the weight pulls my shoulders down, and I frequently say, you just have to remember how good this feels, Denise. So anyway, I was walking back from working down with the flowers the other day and said to myself, attention, drop the shoulders. And then came into my mind this thought that I've no doubt heard in many classes, or the many classes I've taken, but somehow it occurred to me, they say learning is remembering, that be drop the shoulders is such a picture of what it what be it is. As we drop the shoulders, we think of our 11s that help the total exhale. And Mary reminds us to exhale. And I just saw the beauty of and the simplicity of Jin Shin Jitsu represented by B drop the shoulders in a physical and very deep way philosophically. So that was a beautiful aha.
Joy just told me that she is having apple in her apple trees already. They are coming, and I was so happy with this, and the flowers and the plants and the trees, the seeding just turning as a fruit, and the flower just showing up. I think this is the nature of what you said. It's so profound, but brings life so easily and so simple. Thank you, and we miss you. Let's see if we have someone else. Carlos, you have something to say about our day?
Really enjoy the presentations. Congratulations, my friends. And, unfortunately, Jim Rai was a very private person, so we don't know much about his life. But you brought a lot of things. So great. And for me, Joe was one of the most brilliant minds we had in the last century. And he was a scientist because what he did was a scientific research and experience using his own body first, and then other people. But he was a man of faith because in the difficult moments, like when he was almost dying, he decided to meditate. And by intuition, he was inspired to hold the fingers like he saw in many different temples. In, the hand poses of Buddha or the other bodhisattvas. But he decided to research about life. So he went for a slaughterhouse to observe the last moment of life of an animal. He studied bodies, but he studied living beings too, because when he was giving flows to the poor people in the streets, he was observing the results like a scientist. He knew it works, but he was still looking for why the art works. And then he went to the shrine of Ise to pray, asking for this major answer for this major question. And he received it. So we are really blessing to have a man like Jeremiah dedicate his entire life on this journey to rescue something that was lost for so many centuries. And I believe now it's up to us to keep this flame alive. So it's a responsibility, yes, but it's joy because I believe everybody here enjoy to share, enjoy to practice, enjoy to talk about the art. So that's the reason I'm sure that next generations will continue learning and practicing this art. Thank you, everybody. You're great.
And I want also to say thank you to everybody and congratulations. Thanks for everybody being with us in this moment. And I want to make an invitation. We are going to have another meeting, and this other meeting will be talking about Mary Spears. We are going to celebrate Mary. You are going to receive an invitation, and we really, really appreciate your presence in our next Moment of the Artists. Thank you so much, Carlos. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Luisa. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, everybody. Denise. Thank you. I'm seeing some faces. Let me just go to gallery view, Carlos, so we can say goodbye for our friends.
I can see two hands.
Oh, Carlos can see two hands. Joy, please.
As I'm listening, I thought, oh, I haven't done the numbers on that phrase, so I did the numbers on drop the shoulders. Drop the shoulders is the magic of drop is the magic of 8. The is the balance of 6, and shoulders is the window of 4.
Great, thank you. And how about you, Luisa?
So I just wanted to thank Joy and Heather about their in-depth discussion or talk about Jiro, because there were many things that I had not heard before about Jiro, and I really, really got a lot out of that. And also wanted to say to Joy, thank you for helping keeping me on track with that other chart with I was moving down. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, and Joy, wonderful on your numbers, because when you add up the 8, the 6, and the 4, it comes to total and complete. Yeah. This was fun, thank you. It took a lot of me to push me to come out here tonight and, do a presentation. A lot of push, okay? Yeah. So thank you, but I loved it, Louisa, Joy, yeah, great support. And obviously, thank you also to Carlos. A lot of the information that I presented came from your wisdom in the classes going back. And I had to scurry through all my books to find little snippets of history on Jiro. So, and Douglas and Marsha for continued support, and everyone that's joined us this evening, thank you.
Here we are all together. Thank you so much for being part of this timing together for this moment, and hope to be together with you in the next meeting. Okay? Thank you, and be on the flow.